Right, so I will talk briefly on the newest Will Ventures short film called Tamia, the First Battle Gen. This is a prequel to Vaser Claw and Sister Bond actually, and of course Magnolia, right? But I'll more focus on Visa Claw and Sister Bond too. And I'll also mention Akuna as well, because yeah, this is also is a prequel to that, right? So for those who aren't, and this is a prequel of, well, as I say a prequel, but this is just part of this big, soon to be, well, more or less growing with every installment, right? This growing universe of like just superheroic universe involving sci-fi, involving superheroes and aliens and all that kind of stuff. But it's filmed mostly in Trinidad and Tobago, right? And it's ever expanding, ever growing with all these new films and new characters and whatnot, right? So when it comes to Tamia, who is played by Ambika Budu, we were introduced to her in the intro to the first episode of the Visa Claw miniseries, right? And she just thoroughly, she just stood out at that particular moment, right? And we were hearing rumblings about, we will eventually get like, a spin-off short, just kind of chronicling how she became who she was and all that kind of stuff, right? And yeah, that's pretty much what it is, right? It's just pretty much the intro into who she is, where she came from, where she's introduced now. Her family was wiped out by these aliens called the Moors. And this, well, our a regular character in this whole Will Ventures universe by the name of Lucinda, who's played by Charlie Griffith. She discovers her and pretty much trains her into becoming a warrior, right? So in a sense, she's like the first, super soldier as is stated in the show here. But in this case here is Battle Gen, right? So it's just like these just basically these warriors, right? But not so much with swords and axes and whatnot, but yeah, with guns, right? So they're super soldiers, so to speak, right? So it's like that, right? And yeah, she is the first. She is sent on a mission basically to track down the alien warlord who killed her family, and in the process, she actually runs into a young Azira, right? Who is another character who is introduced in that Visa Claw series premiere as well, right? And there's a couple other characters who show up as well. Actually, three more characters that show up, right? We have Akuna, who had her own spin-off short. I believe it was last year, if I'm not mistaken. And in this case here, just in terms of the chronological timeline of this, right? This is before the events of the short film that we saw there. We also have Inferna, who was introduced in Magnolia, and if you remember from Visa Claw as well, they were a tag team and they were doing these missions together. And how she's brought into the story is pretty cool as well, right? And lastly, a character by the name of Lance, who was introduced at the very end of the Sister Bond miniseries, right? He shows up at the end as well, and that ties into what happened at the very end of that show. And I'll stop there, right? So what really, really surprised me about this show here, right? And it really, really caught me by surprise too, right? Is that it was just so simple and straightforward that you don't even need to remember those shows that I mentioned before. You don't need to remember Visa Claw or Kuna or Sister Bond or even Magnolia. You don't have to remember the events of those, right? It tells a story. It's very straightforward. Surprisingly bare bones as well too. But I think that bare bones approach to storytelling really works here because yeah, it's just a simple story. Girl gets his second chance at life, and she is sent on a mission basically to go after the guy who killed her family. And in the process, she meets a young girl who also was left behind because of that same person as well, right? So you just see that sort of like 360, sorry, come around there. And I thought that was pretty interesting though. I think it works very well here because, like, genuinely, it really works here, right? Because, I know for some people, they'll just dive into this and then they'll be like, wait, but I don't remember what happened in this show or I'm not familiar with anything like that at all. But here's, like, it's so straightforward that you don't even need to remember those things. The story is just so simple and to the point, and I was really impressed by that, right? I thought that the pacing was very, very tight here, with its 20-minute runtime. There was little to no fat involved, though, everything just kind of ran smoothly. Just like just like certain moments in Visa Claw and Akuna, there is this alien language that's being used here. And I know that Ansel Harris, the guy who pretty much directed and created this universe here, I know he wrote the dialogue here. He probably had a lot of fun like writing this stuff though, and just having his actors deliver it though, because I picked up on some Mandarin, I hear a little Spanish here, there, you know what I mean, some little inflections here or there though, but just seeing the actors deliver those lines though, it's kind of interesting though, you know what I mean? But it kind of adds to the world of this the world building that we get here, right? The performances for what they are were pretty solid. Again, Ambika really shines here as the lead. She just has the look down, you know what I mean? She has the mannerisms down. You buy into her, quest for revenge, and just her wanting to save the, not so much save the universe, but yeah, just stop this bad guy from just doing a sort of bad stuff, right? And it totally works, right? As far as the suit goes, I do like the suit, you know what I mean, as she described, as Ambika herself described in a recent interview. It's very Robocopish, you know what I mean, in terms of the look and whatnot. But I think it works though. It has a a kind of a retro 80s vibe to it as well too. Again, similar to Robocop, but it works here, right? And there were a few instances where she had to take off the helmet, you know what I mean, to show her face, and it kind of makes sense. Why? Because, yeah, a majority of these scenes take place outdoors, so of course the place was making real hot, so yeah, it would make sense for her to take it off, right? But as far as the suit goes itself, right, just little, not so much a gripe, but that's a little nitpick that I have, right? Since this is the first battle gen, right, and fun fact, there has been instances where, I should say, let's get out of the way, Lance is another battle gen, right? I was hoping that at least we would have seen the future of this early design of the suit itself, right? Because it mentioned, it's a prototype, blah, 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 right? I do remember some instances where you see like, robots, right? Like in the end of Vaser Claw at the beginning of Akuna, for example. So I'm assuming that those are battle gens as well. But I was at least expecting at the end of this where we'd have seen, you know what I mean, because of the success of this suit here, you see how it, impact the, the armies or whatnot later on. So at least you see where those suits are later on, right? And speaking of Lance, though, it was kind of weird that he didn't get shouted out. Like, I didn't see his name in the credits, though. And, like, for me now, I had to do a little digging up and realize, he was that dude at the very end of Sister Bond, right? Because he brought up something involving Vaser Claw there. I was like, all right, well, cool. But how come his name isn't there? That was really weird to me, right? And lastly, when it comes to just for me, just personally, as far as gripes go, right? This is just a technical issue, but to me, this really stood out, right? While I do appreciate the incorporation of like how to say, like mechanical devices that I'll say without spoiling anything. One thing that I felt could have been improved here was the lighting, or at least the detail, like light and shadow on these devices itself, right? Because yeah, when you see them, it's in daylight, right? So it's kind of weird where you're seeing the device itself. Or I should say, in this case, you see like this gigantic mech, right? But it's in daytime, and you're not seeing any shadow of it, right? So it just kind of looks like just a robot just there, kind of copy and paste it onto the shot, which is in daylight, right? But if there was like a little detail in it as far as the lighting goes and the shadow and whatnot, it would have worked. It would have looked a little bit better. It would have looked like it belonged in that scene, right? If that makes sense. And I have to see the same thing for some interior shots as well, too, right? Well, most with those scenes that involve green screen, right? I felt like there could have been a little bit more, just a little more thought put into the lighting itself, right? So when characters are in a specific room, most times they are underneath some kind of light or whatever it is. But I felt we could have seen that, right? Instead of just the light just being on their faces and whatnot, we could have seen like a light overhead, just to add some detail to the shot itself, right? Make it feel more organic instead of like, they are clearly in a green room, right? Or whatever it is, right? So those are just gripes that just sort of stood out to me, right? But other than that, though, I was genuinely surprised by this, right? But again, it's just really how straightforward the story is, right? And I would say just for people who go into this blindly, they will pretty much pick up on everything that's going on. And for the little bits of stuff that they don't understand, or like the characters or whatnot that show up, there are the other short films that I mentioned as well. There's the mini-series that I mentioned as well that you could go to and you could get more information on that, right? But as far as a prequel goes, this was solid business for me, man. So rating wise, decent and strong 4 out of 5. I genuinely enjoy this, man, right? So It's on gtnetworktv.com. Check it out. And while you're there, you can check out Vaser Claw and Magnolia and all these other shows as well, man. And I can't wait for the Capernaum. I believe it's going to be another short film as well. I don't think it's going to be a miniseries. I could be wrong, but I guess we will see come July, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I'll be looking out for that, man. But yeah, Tamia, the first battle gen is a real deal. Yeah, check it out, man. That's it.